Hello, people. Resident Evil Requiem is here. I've been playing it a little bit. I'll give my impression in another video. In this one, the topic is gonna be another one. But first, I wanna mention something. I got spoiled on something while visiting YouTube, and you can say it's my fault. Yes, it's my fault because you shouldn't come to YouTube when there's a new release of a game that's story heavy. And yeah, it's pretty much 1 or 2 days before the release, or even the same day, because people are gonna upload the full game pretty much with the titles. When they load a video, they just put the title full of spoilers, like this guy boss fight. So in the game there's this guy as a boss fight. This guy does this thing in the cutscene and so on. And I still don't understand how publishers allow that, because I, I mean, people are gonna get ruined. They're gonna get spoiled. Now, I personally don't care that much because, I mean, it's a video game story, so it's not the end of the world if I get spoiled. But people, I mean, there are people who care more than that, and also I think it damages the sales because people are gonna say, okay, I'm gonna watch the game on YouTube, and I'll buy it later. So they delay buying it, but also it can affect them the opposite way. Maybe it makes them want to buy it immediately. I just think that there should be some kind of opt out, some kind of option. I don't know, some safeguard in place to avoid this kind of BS, because it can be very annoying. So you just can't come on YouTube for a few days. I had to come on YouTube because I have a YouTube channel, so it's not like. But yeah, I got spoiled. Whatever. It's not the end of the world. Uh, Other than that, next year is 10 years since Resident Evil 7 came out, with the Resident Evil, actually, not Resident Evil, Reach for the Stars engine. That's his real name. The name of the engine that's pretty much Capcom is using in all of their modern games. Yeah, it debuted with Resident Evil 7. It's been a long time. And you can divide the Resident Evil eras in pretty much three categories at this point. The classic era, sort of like think Sonic Generations, yes, sort of like the kind of sub-classification. There's the classic era with the classic games 1, 2, and 3, and all the other spin-offs, and Gun Survivor games, Outbreaks, stuff like Resident Evil 1 Remake and Zero also is part of that era. I would say it's like all the games released before before Resident Evil 4 are part of the classic era. Then there's there's the Resident Evil 4 and post era, the modernish era, which comprises all the games post Resident Evil 4. 4, 5, 6, Operation Raccoon City, and I don't know if there was something else during that period. I don't think there was. And then there's the latest era, which it's pretty much the last 10 years. 7, 8, all the remakes, 8, 9, and yeah, all the projects that have been released in the last 10 years after Resident Evil 7. So you can argue the last 10 years have been good, bad. In my opinion, they have been slightly better overall than the post Resident Evil 4 era. The post Resident Evil 4 era was kind of a clusterfuck, honestly, because there was a lot of turmoil, a lot of uncertainty. They weren't really sure where they wanted to bring the franchise, because with 4, yeah, okay, they pretty much soft rebooted the franchise. They moved away from Umbrella and everything, new gameplay. But after that, there was a shake-up at Capcom with most of the Resident Evil team leaving. The, the guys that previously wrote the story also either dying or leaving. So yeah, they found themselves at Capcom not knowing exactly what to do in the post Resident Evil 4 era, and it showed because Resident Evil 5 was pretty much a retread of Resident Evil 4, you can say. And yeah, with Resident Evil 6, they try to move a little bit further into a new direction, but obviously they try to make everybody happy, and that rarely, that rarely ever works. And yeah, and they pretty much almost killed the franchise after that game. And then yeah, they were pretty. I will say they were pretty smart by waiting a few years to make another game, because Resident Evil 7 came out in 2017, I think. And yeah, it was like almost 5 years since Resident Evil 6. 5 6 years, I don't remember exactly the release date is, but yeah, they waited a lot to reboot everything, and they did a soft reboot again. Same universe, different characters, but it took place in the same storyline. They try to scale back the level of threat. No more world-ending threats, but just a little bit more secluded locations. A threat that's a little bit more contained, less dangerous, you can say. They pretty much went back to what Resident Evil 1 was. Resident Evil 7 is pretty much Resident Evil 1 again, just with a different cast of characters. And it works partially because the cast is engaging, mostly Jack Baker. Other and Lucas, yeah, Lucas can be okay. He's a scheming bastard, but those two carry the game pretty much. Ethan is a blank slate, pretty much. It's an avatar for the player. It's very telling that you also barely see his face. So it's your average Joe, a new protagonist with not much of a backstory either, because we don't know really much about him, as far as I know. Now, half of the game is pretty good, but the second half drops in quality quite a bit because there's not enough variety. After the midpoint, the game just becomes a very action heavy focused game. The enemies also are not my favorite because they lack variety. They all look the same. That's the biggest problem. It's uh, like we have molded. Yes, molded, but the molded are all the same. Like the ones that are standing on their legs are just pretty much like kind of like zombies, you can say. But they behave the same. Some of them have a bigger hand, the other ones are normal and so on. But yeah, they are all like the same. There's the one on its four legs that's pretty much like a liger, but they lack a distinct identity because they all look the same. They are very boring enemies, in my opinion. Almost, I would say, the worst enemies in the franchise. Among the worst. Those ones, the molded and the guys from Resident Evil Revelations 1 are probably the most boring enemies in the franchise. And yeah, I mean, overall, I will say they did a good job. It doesn't recapture the magic that Resident Evil 1 was, but I think Resident Evil 7 is an okay game. A little bit of a streamer bait game with all those cutscenes in first person and everything. Also, the game being a first person, but I would say it works overall. Then, after that, they started remaking the games. I already talked about the remakes extensively. I think they are not bad games, but they are subpar remakes for the most part. So, both 2, 4, and 3. 3 is just straight up bad. 2 is okay, but it's very butchered. Butchered. A lot of content is missing. The writing sucks. and everyone. I've talked extensively in my 2 hours long video. Four is probably the best remake among the bunch, among the modern ones, but it still feels not that good in my opinion because a bunch of issues with the gameplay. Also, the story got sanitized a bit too much for my taste. The inertia in the controls and everything. So it's a fun game. I understand if people like it, but I don't think it's that great. Like the original and the remake are probably tied neck and neck. I will say maybe the original is slightly better in some aspects, and the remake is better in other aspects. But yeah, they're pretty much almost there. You can say. And now there's Requiem, but Requiem I don't consider it yet because I have to play it extensively. So far, I am enjoying it. It's pretty much a mix of 7 and 4 remake. Both their best and worst aspects, I would say, are present. But I'll make a proper video on that. 8 as well, there's to talk about, but honestly, 8 is probably one of the most mediocre games in the series. It had literally no staying power. Nobody talks about it anymore. They try to promote it with the Dimitrescu, with the safe, thorny character that gets killed pretty much 1 hour in, and that's it. It's very mediocre, both in terms of level design, in terms of story, in terms of I mean, not characters. The characters are okay, but it just feels like uh, an uglier copy of Resident Evil 4. So, I mean, in my opinion, one of the reasons they made that game is so they could recycle the assets for Resident Evil 4 remake. Nobody is gonna remove this head canon from my, from my mind, but that's my opinion because it feels very uninspired as a game. And yeah, that was pretty much it. This has been the last 10 years when it comes to Resident Evil. So the last 10 years have been better, I would say, than the Resident 4 post era because they have been more consistent. Like the latest Resident Evil games have been more consistent in terms of quality compared to 4, 5, and 6, but they aren't really that much better in my opinion in terms of quality and gameplay. They have their own set of issues. It's just that the quality was more like stable. There were no big shakeups. Like the difference between 4 and 6, it's that 6 is kind of a garbage experience. So while there's a really no garbage experience between the modern games, there are subpar games like 3 Remake, but I won't say it's a garbage experience. It's a pretty safe game in that sense. And the other thing that's interesting is that the Resident Evil engine is at this point is the standard for Resident Evil games. All the Resident Evil games are looking the same. The feeling is the same. The assets are the same. So they are starting to feel a little bit samey. While before they were, they felt pretty unique because all the games, almost all the games, had their own engine and assets. Like the jump between the first one and the third one, for example, is pretty heavy. They may use the same engine, but you can tell there's a difference in the models and everything. Then there's the jump to Code Veronica, and then the remakes and so on. The remake zero, like there's been a consistent jump in quality and in terms of assets and everything. Same with the Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6. 4 and 5 use the same engine, but 6 I think uses a slightly different engine. There's a bit of a difference in terms of assets and graphics. And then, but with the new games, they all look very samey. I think the Resident Evil engine, Richard for the Star engine, is contributing to making the game feel very samey between each other. It kind of kind of makes them feel like a soulless experience because the games don't have their own identity anymore. It's just an amalgamated slop of assets that all look the same between each other. There's a slight improvement here and there, but they look very samey. Like the graphics are, are very similar between all the games, and I think it's the same issue with the Yakuza games in terms of Kiwami. Kiwami games also feel a little bit soulless in this sense because they all share the same assets, the same interface, and so on. So I personally hope that Capcom moves away from the RE engine soon because you'll start feeling like you're playing the same game just with a different skin. The games are very samey, like I said before. So I don't like when all the games in the franchise are made on the same engine and using the same font, the same menu sounds, and a very standardized experience between each other. And you can say, well, it's a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing because it kills the originality of the experience because you already know what to expect. You already know how it's gonna look, how it's gonna play for the most part. So yeah, hopefully Capcom moves away from this engine for the next 10 years, but I don't know at this point. It seems like they're dead set on using this engine for the time being. So yeah, in conclusion, I'm tired of the Resident Evil engine. I want Capcom to stop using it because it makes all the games feel like slop. And I miss honestly the MT framework. It was a very good engine in my opinion. The peak of stylized graphics. While Resident Evil engine, it's more like an engine that um, promotes bets everything on the realism, which in video games, if we're talking video games, especially video games like Street Fighter, Resident Evil, and so on, I don't think it's a very good fit. But yeah, guys, you let me know your thoughts on the matter, and I'll catch you very soon. Bye bye.